Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Signals and noise. How Star Trek thinks about media, power, and whose stories get told. Star Trek has always cared about who gets to broadcast the story and who's working the mixer in the back room. Across the franchise, news feeds, stage plays, holosuite fantasies, and official histories aren't just set dressing, they're battlegrounds where truth, power, and identity scrap for airtime. From Gladiator TV on a parallel Earth to a hologram fighting for the right to publish.
Ah, welcome.
Trek keeps asking, who controls the channel? And what happens to the people living off-screen when they don't? Consider one of the earliest, cheekiest warning shots, bread and circuses, from the original series. Those old scientists. Planet 8924's Empire keeps its citizens docile with gladiatorial blood sport beamed live to a planet of couch spectators. Ratings, sponsors, and all. It's not really that subtle.
And that's the point.
The episode lampoons a mass media machine that feeds on spectacle and teaches us to stop asking why, as long as the picture is pretty and the show runs on time. When a government speaks through a studio headset, morality becomes programming notes.
Dig into that.
But Trek also believes in art that brawls back. In The Conscience of the King, from, again, the original series, a traveling troupe performs classical tragedy while hiding a mass murderer in its leading man. A parable about theater as both mask and mirror. Performance can expose power or launder it. The same stage lights that reveal can also blind. Kirk eventually unmasks Caridian, not with phasers, but with dramaturgy. Connect the actor to the atrocity and force the story to reconcile with the facts. When the medium upgrades from footlights to photons, the ethical stakes sharpen. The holodeck is Trek's most dangerous camera. It never blinks, it flatters the auteur. And it will happily rewrite a person to fit someone else's plot. Oh, here we go. In The Next Generation, Geordi's idealized Leia Brahms, first conjured as a professional collaborator, then revealed to be a projection of his own longings, shows how easily a creative tool can become a consent situation. Fiction here isn't harmless diversion, it's power misapplied to a real person's likeness. The discomfort is definitely left to hang here. And yet, the holodeck also heals. In DS9's It's Only a Paper Moon, the holosuite gives Nog a sanctuary where a lounge singer, my boy Vic, with perfect pitch and infinite patience, he actually helps him stitch together a life after trauma. Yeah, the holosuite. The program is artifice, sure, but the comfort is real. And recovery is not less authentic for needing a velvet curtain. Trek's take is pragmatic and, dare I say, humane. Mediated spaces can be crutches or cages. What matters is who holds the remote and whether they can put it down. Testing that line hard is the Doctor in Voyager. In the episode Author, he writes a scathing holo-novel about workplace prejudice and suddenly collides with a legal system that insists he isn't a person. Just property with a good bedside manner. He is, after all, a hologram. The ruling he eventually wins is narrow. Artists' rights, not full personhood. But it is a precedent born from media itself. A work of art forces the Federation to decide what counts as a who. In classic Trek fashion, the controversy around publishing the book, suppress it as classified, or let it speak, becomes the crucible where a new right is forged. Stories do that when the law can't keep up. Trek also knows that history is unfortunately an editor's game. Living Witness is a masterclass in how museums, and by extension whole cultures, curate the past to flatter the present. Centuries after Voyager's visit, a planet's official exhibit recasts Janeway's crew as genocidal villains until a backup of the Doctor wakes up and demands a correction. The episode itself lets us watch a people renegotiate their memory in public, a reminder that institutions don't just store history, they oftentimes write it over and over and over again, with political incentives baked in. And sometimes the broadcast is the coup. In Enterprise's Demons/Terra Prime, John Frederick Paxton hijacks a planetary scale array to deliver a slick xenophobic ultimatum live to Earth. Purge the aliens or watch Starfleet burn. It's horrific. It's not a manifesto. It's a proof of concept for media as terror, violence packaged as primetime. Trek's verdict is unambiguous. Demagogues love a microphone, and technology is indifferent to what you shout into it. What a wacky, implausible, far-off sci-fi future that is. Fast forward to the 24th/25th centuries, and news isn't just background chatter. It's a character with opinions. Episode 1 of Star Trek Picard opens on a live sit-down where FNN's interviewer needles Picard about the costly Romulan rescue. She frames the moral calculus like a budget debate while the cameras stay rolling. The Federation's ideals meet the Chiron crawl, and nuance loses to the commercial break. Trek doesn't hate journalists. It mistrusts gatekeepers and those who confuse volume with popularity. Meanwhile, over on the wacky lower decks, we poke affectionate fun at how movies shape memory. Crisis Point and its sequel are holodeck films complete with lens flares, title cards, and melodramatic needle drops.
Vacation's over.
A meta joke about how we mythologize ourselves the second someone puts a camera on us. Trek grins and warns us. Cinema is a joy and a distortion. Watch your angles. All of this lands with special charge when representation is on the line. Trek's canon keeps widening the frame. The infamous, complicated, forced kiss in the original series, Plato's Stepchildren, still marked a historic moment of people of differing melanin counts kissing on US network TV. Deep Space Nine's Rejoined features a queer kiss and treats it as tragedy born of trill cultural taboo, not titillation, or same-sex prejudice. Discovery centers a queer couple, Stamets and Culber, and welcomes Adira, non-binary, and Gray, a trans man, into the heart of the ship. Star Trek Picard lets 7 of 9 love out loud. And these aren't after-school specials, they're narrative commitments to who can be on the bridge, in the bar, and part of the story. If that sounds like a sermon, Trek undercuts the piety with cautionary tales about misrepresentation. Original series Patterns of Force shows a Federation historian remaking a planet in the image of Nazi Germany for the sake of efficiency? A toxic case study in how an academic with access and hubris can script a society to death. The franchise has never been shy about naming the danger. When elites confuse engineering with ethics, propaganda follows. One of the most searing takes on authorship and media in Star Trek comes in Deep Space Nine's Far Beyond the Stars. A simply phenomenal episode. When Captain Sisko collapses under the weight of loss and despair, he dreams himself into Benny Russell, a talented writer and sci-fi novelist in 1950s USA, whose greatest crime is imagining a black man commanding a starship. Benny's battle is not against phasers or Cardassians, but against the C-suite and advertisers. The invisible hands of a system that insists his story can't exist. That his vision of the future is unprintable simply because of who wrote it and who it centers. The episode is meta to its core. Star Trek itself, a franchise often heralded for envisioning inclusivity, turns the camera around to show the historical gatekeeping that kept voices like Benny's, and by extension Sisko's, from the page. His heartfelt breakdown at the end, screaming that he is Captain Sisko collapses the distance between author and character, past and present. The message is both timeless and urgent. Media is a battlefield where systemic prejudice silences, alters, and erases, and the struggle to publish freely is inseparable from the struggle to be recognized as fully human. As a bellwether far beyond the stars anticipates today's fights over representation in media, algorithmic bias, and publishing structural inequities, reminding us that the right to tell your story is always contested, always radical, and always worth defending. So what does all this say about our media world, this messy landscape ringed by ad tech, trolls, and soft-spoken censors? Trek's answer is both romantic and ruthless. Romantic because it keeps faith that stories can make law kinder, see author, make memory more honest, in Living Witness, and make the wounded whole, it's only a paper moon. Ruthless because it never forgets that media is a tool of power. Gladiator games calibrated to ratings, ultimatum broadcast at gunpoint, interviews that serve institutions first and truth second. Trek's future isn't safe because the tech is advanced. It's safer when citizens fight to keep the feed honest. And that fight always comes down to access and authorship. Who gets the byline? Who gets edited out? I think just about every indigenous group could tell you some form of this. The franchise's long arc on personhood, Data in The Measure of a Man, the Doctor in Author, and later synths and AIs across the 25th century, keeps circling the same principle. If you can create, you can claim. Trek leans into the mess of free expression because gatekeeping breeds corruption. When power says you may not publish, perform, or exist as written, Trek's captains and civilians alike tend to hit send anyway and accept the consequences. That roguish freedom fighter optimism, the Federation of Misfits, is the franchise's secret editorial policy. Tell your story. Let others tell theirs. Challenge the official narrative early and often. And when the signal inevitably gets jammed by big corporations, oligarchs, governments, corporatists, or anyone else who confuses control with safety, remember the Doctor petitioning for authorship, Nog rebuilding himself in a hollow lounge, Janeway refusing to let a museum calcify a lie, and a starship crew walking off a rigged soundstage to confront the men behind the curtain. In Star Trek, we don't just explore strange new worlds. We also debug the ones with a bad broadcast standard. And it starts, always, with a willingness to help and keeping the channel open.